changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more, no more complaining. People, their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more, no more.
Well, I've got something that I really want to unpack, and I want to tell you, starting straight up, that my opinion of all of this has moved in a variety of ways. I ran into my neighbor this morning and told her that I was going to talk about Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Oscars this morning, and she didn't know anything about it. There are people who don't pay attention to things like that, and as a movie person, and that's what I would say, one of my great loves in life is movies. I've been a huge fan of how movies are made. I've read books on how directors direct. I have read tons of books on how movies were made themselves. There's some great books out there about movies, and there's also some great Netflix. Anyway, I'm a movie guy. I look at IMDb probably as much as anything, and that's the International Movie Database. So big fan of that. I'm also a really big fan of Chris Rock. I was thinking about that this morning. If I had to think of my top 5 comedian favorites of all time, of course you got to put George Carlin and Richard Pryor in there, although they're not rated G. But he's definitely up there. I've always considered him to be very insightful and also very funny. He catches you off guard with his comments. So big fan of his. To say that I'm a big fan of Will Smith is a understatement. So here's the irony of this whole thing, just to let you know. I shared with you a while back that I read Will Smith's book, Will. Enjoyed it, thought it was really good, got a lot out of it. I also, in my book, the new version of A Complaint-Free World, the newest version, the one that came out in 2012, in there, I talked about having presented Dr. Maya Angelou with the 6 millionth complaint-free bracelet, and that my goal was to present the 14th millionth to Will Smith. Now, the reason I said that is that Googling Will Smith back then, especially when I wrote that, which would have been 10 years ago, brought up all these motivational things about him. And there had been a number of things about how when he was a boy, his father had torn down a brick wall, and he and his brother had to figure out how to rebuild the wall. And they worked on it every day for a couple of years. And it's just a great story of not only resilience, but it's also a story of being able to figure things out and to rely on yourself. And that even as a kid, you can do some pretty big things. Very, very inspiring. So for those of you who may not know what happened at the Academy Awards ceremony, Chris Rock was the host, and he was doing his normal running the room, not running literally, but running around the room with his eyes. And he had pre-planned jokes for a lot of people, and I think he possibly ad-libbed a few. I don't know the source of the joke that he made about Jada Pinkett Smith, Will Smith's wife. But what happened was that Will Smith walked up on stage, and when I saw it, I thought he punched him. The way he pulled his hand and up and moved it and everything like that, there was some force behind that. It's being called a slap. And Will Smith then walked back to his seat, and he began to say, "Keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth." He said that a couple of times, really loud, or "Get my wife's name out of your mouth." The broadcast, the director, as soon as Smith walked up and hit Chris Rock, the director went to silence on the audio and did their best not to follow it too much. However, international audiences saw everything, saw it uncut. And it was a moment. Now, I was watching the movie Ali yesterday when I saw this on my phone. I checked my phone and there was this information about the Academy Awards and what had happened. And I was watching Ali. Now, why was I watching the movie Ali, which is about Muhammad Ali? I think it is one of Will Smith's best acting performances by far. I also learned in the book about Will Smith and his autobiography that Muhammad Ali approached him. He said, basically, I'm not going to allow an autobiographical movie to be made about me unless Will Smith plays me. And Will Smith played Muhammad Ali. So I'm watching this, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, wow, I had forgotten that Jada Pinkett Smith, his wife, plays his girlfriend who becomes his wife in the movie. And she's great. She is really, really brilliantly cast. So it just hit me. I mean, here I am watching a movie by someone I consider a hero and someone who reacted in less than heroic fashion. Live television. And I'm watching this and I feel angry, sick to my stomach. I equated it to when I found out about Bill Cosby and all of his history. The reason is I put Bill Cosby on such a huge pedestal that when he fell further for me, I think, than some people. And the same is true of Will Smith. In my book, as I say, I talk about him and how inspiring he is, and I want to give him the 14 millionth bracelet, which we've actually passed by now. So all of this had an emotional impact on me yesterday. And I thought a lot about it. And I guess I researched it. Someone said I researched it. I went in and I've watched the actual event 6 times. I've watched it roughly. It's only a minute or so. But I also watched the various versions of it. And also someone had videotaped it from shot a video from their phone. And you could see Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry trying to calm Will Smith down. So this conversation that I was grateful for last night, I was expressing my disappointment at Will Smith. I was also expressing how his book ends. It talks a lot about the challenges that he and his wife have, a lot. And they have done interviews where it's like these people are married and happy, and they've actually split up and they have an open marriage, meaning they, have romantic entanglements and relationships with other people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm watching, and the book ends with him talking about how he feels more spiritually elevated, which again he does ayahuasca, which is it's using a plant-based medicine. It's basically not basically. It's like it's a psychedelic that supposedly puts you into a trance and then causes you to. It's like seeing your soul and healing yourself. So again, my expectation went up even higher. This is a guy who is spiritual, however he chooses to be it, but sees some spiritual elevation. So when all of this happened, it like I said, I took it kind of almost personally. You know how we do? When someone that we admire, I don't know how you felt maybe with Bill Cosby or even with, I could do a list, but I'm not going to. It would be depressing for us all. But we've all seen people fall, do things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I titled today's Jumpstart Restraint. But it's not about Will Smith. It's not about his restraint or lack thereof. It was Chris Rock's restraint. I was so admiring of him and how he handled that. I've had a couple of speeches recently where I'm live on stage in front of 4 or 500 people. And one time there was a table of drunks that was just would not be stopped in their talking. And I remember how stressful that was. And then I did one where there was technical glitches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you know that everyone is looking at you. Well, in my case, that was 1 to 500 people. In this case, just domestically, it was about 10 million people were watching. And Chris Rock was right after it happened. First of all, as Will Smith was walking up to him, his hands were down. He was like a friend was coming up. He thought it was going to be a hug or something. I don't know, but he was just open. And then when it happened, I thought he was going to go down, but he didn't. He just came right back. And as Will Smith walked away and made a couple of remarks, this is where the real restraint came in, because the real power in the room is Chris Rock. He's got the microphone and the camera's on him primarily. And as Will Smith was hurling invectives at him, he said this word and cut himself off, but he said something along the lines of, boy, I could, you get it? Boy, I could. In other words, he had the mic, the camera, and the mental capacity to have sliced Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith into little tiny pieces on worldwide television. Instead, he showed restraint. He reminded me of Johnny Carson in that moment. I don't hope that's not a negative comparison. To me, Johnny Carson was always cool no matter what happened. And what happened was big. Let's don't kid ourselves. You know, you've never seen Jerry Lewis walk up and slap David Niven on the Academy Awards. This is a big thing. So I want to celebrate Chris Rock's restraint and his ability to maintain some decorum and continue to do this broadcast live after having been hit. Man, like I said, I was bugged because there were some drunks at a table and not bugged, but thrown off. You know, I found it difficult to do my speech, not impossible, but difficult because of that and some AV things. This man has just been, as he said, Will Smith just smacked the S out of me. And then he said, that was, and then he halted a moment and he said, the best night or the biggest night on television. You know, that was the biggest. And even that in its social commentary about how we are drawn to violence and things like that. So I really, really admired Chris Rock. I admired how he handled it. I was very disappointed in Will Smith. Now, you know who else I was disappointed in? Me. I'll tell you why. I was having a conversation about this last night with someone who really didn't have a dog in this show. You know, I'm the one that's, you know, this is a big deal too. And so I'm talking to her and she's trying to help me see that, you know, there's two sides of this, that Chris Rock totally went over the line with his comment. And when you understand that Jaden Pinkett Smith has alopecia, so making a hair joke, not necessarily in the best of taste, that there were mitigating factors and that Will Smith was just reacting and just reacting. I think that was, and those were not necessarily the words, but that's what I got. And what I realized was that I got defensive about my position about this. In other words, I was being reactive and was not necessarily showing restraint. For those of you in the Complaint Free Life group, you'll see that I switched my bracelet, started back over on day one because I was complaining. And so as I've looked at this post this morning. I'm going to go into your comments in a moment. I look forward to hearing them. So now's your chance to comment about this. People are angry. They are polarized. And I can't help but believe that this is not going to, until the media cycle churns, this is going to keep a lot of people talking, especially now with the Academy Awards talking about taking action maybe against Will Smith. Who knows? The person I feel sorry for in this is Will Smith. I feel it's going to impact his career. He has built himself as a very positive image in our minds. This is not a Mickey Rourke or Marlon Brando, who were notorious for hard to work with, et cetera, did great work, but he's always had this reputation of being a good dude. And so I want to say that I get it, and I hope that this has minimal impact. Although, and I thought about this morning, I want this to have minimal impact, but I'm going to talk about it, and about 5,000 people are going to hear my words on it. So for me, what I got was, because it always should come back to you, every story should be your story and a way of growing. And that is that be your own hero. Don't put people on a pedestal. And sometimes heroes even struggle with being congruent with what they practice. I know I do. I'm the complaint-free guy, and still sometimes it's like out of my mouth before I realize it. So I just want to say to Will Smith that a lot of people are posting, I'll never see your movies, I'll never this, I'll never that. And private and public are two very different things, and he's still a brilliant actor. To me, this would be like, the way I see it, I have the same sort of parody in my mind as Will Smith and Tom Hanks. And so I can't imagine Tom Hanks walking up on stage and smacking anybody. I think, as I say, this is our own story, and it gives us a chance to look at our own selves and to say, what can I do to improve me? And one of the things I can do to improve me is not to judge others too harshly. And at the same time, I don't want to put Chris Rock on a pedestal. I do aspire. Could you imagine being able to stand there, be hit? His hands stayed behind his back. It was the way he stood that reminded me of Johnny Carson. To be able to take someone doing that to you in public, and the natural reaction, I think, would be to hit him back. But not only did he not do that, he stood there, he took it, he kept the smile on his face, and it was admirable.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more complaining people. Their lives are changing.